After returning from a 3-game road trip and earning a good win over the Knicks on Monday, head coach James Borrego sits down with Matt and Chris to talk about the past week and look at what's ahead as the team moves toward the All-Star break. This is the Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Welcome to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. I'm Matt Rochinski, joined by Chris Kroger. We're coming off a huge win last night, getting a win at home over the New York Knicks. What did you see last night?
Well, I saw the 5th win in the last 7 tries for the Hornets, so I think the Hornets are playing some really good basketball right now, and still, I think you can honestly say, haven't even scratched the surface, I think, of what this team could be when they're clicking on all cylinders. And, you know, I know Coach was a little worried about New York. We saw them in a loss here, 126-124 in overtime. The Hornets lost in a 21-point comeback for New York, their first win in this building in almost 5 years at that time. And New York's a team that, because they're just sitting there with 10 wins, they got a lot of young players, they're trying to figure out what their young pieces are. You don't know what you're getting, not only from game to game, but from quarter to quarter, possession to possession. And I think if you watched that game last night, you saw that Vonleh came out early, was trying to get his. There were times late in the game where you saw Vonleh try to get back active again. Trey Burke was out there shooting, Tim Hardaway Jr. You also saw Kevin Knox get hot in the second quarter. So just an interesting team. It's one of those teams that forget style points. Just find a way to move on, beat them, and just get on to the next game. And the Hornets did that in the 4th.
Yeah, when Aaron Pitzenberger and I were talking in our pregame show, she had mentioned the fact that who's going to score for this team? It's coming from all over the place on any given game. That's what makes it so difficult.
And those are the dangerous ones. You know, they haven't been playing Enes Kanter, and Coach was telling me before the game, he said, honestly, you never say this, but he said, you almost wish they were playing because you know stylistically how they're going to play. As a coach, that's what you want. You want to know this team's going to play this way. I can game plan against you, and we'll just line up and see who executes, right? Last night with New York was not one of those kind of games. It's just, let's figure out who can settle in. Ultimately, at the end of the day, after 4 quarters, who's on top. And that was the Hornets, thanks to a pretty big performance from Malik in the 4th.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. 12 points, 4 3-pointers, and Kemba kicking him the ball every time. I love to see that.
What a dish.
So, aside from that win, though, we just came off a 3-game road trip, went 1-2 on the road trip, but we've been hearing from Coach consistently over the last couple weeks. He just wants to see marked improvement from this team. Even though we went 1-2, still looked pretty impressive, especially in the first 3 quarters against Milwaukee to close that road trip. What did you see while you were out on the trip?
Well, I see a team coming together. So beyond even the basketball aspect, you know, because I get to travel with the team, I'm around them, there's a camaraderie that's starting to build. You can feel it. There's a chemistry, and it's funny when you go back now and you think of how this team, and probably every fan thought going into the month of January, 10-14 on the road, very daunting task. This was probably going to be the most difficult break in the schedule all year long in terms of how many games you're playing, where they're being played, and yet maybe the unintended consequence in a good way is this team has a bunker mentality about it. Now, they've spent a lot of time together on the road. They've been doing a lot of team dinners on nights when they have an off night, and I think it's helped. I think this team has grown together as a team. There's a cohesiveness I think you can feel on the court, and that matters. You know, I've talked to some of the players. Jeremy Lamb's told me, absolutely, you have to want to play together as a team. You got to like each other. It's not to say you got to be best friends off the court, but you got to want to pull for your teammates. Right. And you watch teams that maybe are struggling, go see how their players are reacting out on the court or their bench, and there isn't that cohesiveness. So I think that's where it starts. This team has come together throughout this month, and you know, coaches, I think his ultimate barometer was, as you said, let's be better on the other end of this thing. And here the Hornets are. One more game. We got to play Boston tomorrow in Boston, but as we stand right now, Hornets in the 8th spot in the East, and holding at least a split or tiebreakers with 3 of the 4 teams beneath them. Still with a lot of games to go against Washington. Wizards are up 1-0 in that series, tied 1-1 still with Brooklyn, who's ahead of the Hornets in the standings. So I think the Hornets have really acquitted themselves nicely in this month, and probably should feel some momentum going to February.
Yeah, that we mentality versus a me mentality is definitely evident on this Hornets team. And to your point, if you enter that month going, this is going to be our most terrifying stretch, and you're still in the same position when you're coming out of it, we will definitely take that. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with defense, what this team has been doing defensively. You were talking to me before the show. This team has been playing absolutely out of its mind in the last 8 games.
Well, it's crazy when you think about it from this standpoint, where the Hornets over the last 8 games have held a team to 108 or less. And you might say, well, that's a random number. Why 108? Well, 108, the Hornets feel like as a coaching staff, if they can limit their opponent to 27 points or less on average per quarter, well, 27 times 4. I'm not good at math, but I think that's 108, okay? And when they hold teams to that number, they are fantastic on the year. They're 15-3. They've held 6 of those teams in the last 8 games to 108 or less. The Hornets in the last 8 games, 4th in defense. And so it was a Friday night loss just over 2 weeks ago in Portland where the Hornets were frankly embarrassed. It was 127-96. Everybody to a man felt embarrassed by not only their performance, but maybe a lack of execution and overall competitiveness in that game. Nick Batum told me that the team had a meeting, and they basically laid it all out on the table, and now you're seeing the results of that, where the Hornets are 4th in defense in the NBA over the last 8 games. So offense has been coming and going, as you'd expect, maybe without Cody Zeller, but the team is winning with defense. That's pretty impressive.
And when you look at that defensive change, a lot of that has been, you're going to get your defense from Marvin Williams. Nick Batum is going to play great defense. MKG is going to play great defense. Kemba. But let's talk about the young guys and the defense they've been playing over this stretch, because it seems like all of those guys have elevated their games on the defensive side of the court.
Yeah, I think Malik has been much more engaged on that side of the ball, which is really, I think, all you're asking for at this point in his career. Just be more engaged. As Coach has said, you're going to make mistakes at times. That happens. You're a young player, and you live with those things. More often than not, I need effort, I need intensity, I need urgency, I need attention to detail into the game plan when you're out on the court. You're seeing that. Miles, I thought, came right out of the chute in the first month and a half of the year playing that way, almost every single night. Same thing. He'd make mistakes. He's a rookie in the NBA. And then he hit that rookie wall. He admitted it. And now you've seen a different Miles again over the last 2 weeks. His energy, his spirit about him. He's got a real spirit about him, I think we all would agree, when you watch him on the court. That's come back to life. So you're right. It's the bench, and they were big in the win over New York. And you're seeing not only that, Bismack Biyombo, I think, is really, Biz has been a pro for a long time in this league, but when he left this team a few years ago in free agency, went to Toronto, then went to Orlando, he's come back a better player. Bismack Biyombo, without a doubt, is a more complete player today than he was 3 or 4 years ago.
All right, we always tee things up with Chris's takes to start off the show. We're going to get to Coach Borrego's takes after this break.
Hey, Hugo, before we do this job swap, can you show me how this half-court shot thing goes? I'm not the most experienced with basketball. Yeah? Okay, great. Okay. All right, so okay, bend my knees. Oh, arms up. Oh, I'm glad I didn't ask you to show me how to dunk. How do I get down?
Welcome back to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. We're being joined now by head coach James Borrego. Coach, you got to be feeling pretty good about the guys right now. Won 5 out of their last 7, playing really well.
Yeah, the guys are battling. We've gotten better over the last couple of weeks. Obviously we had a tough stretch there with Cody being out, going out there on the West Coast trip. But as we talked about the last few weeks, we wanted to get better. And I think we have. I think our guys are starting to trust each other more, play more, defense right now. We're committed on that end of the floor. The ball is moving, especially in the fourth quarter. You saw it again last night. We weren't trying to do it one-on-one. We did it with the pass. The ball was moving, but we got stops in the third quarter, the fourth quarter. That's what got that game done last night. So I think we're growing defensively. The numbers are proving it out. But I think it's overall effort right there. Our schemes are more solid right now. Everybody's bought into that end of the floor.
Coach, I know talking to Nick after the Phoenix win, which was last week, that was 3 straight at that time. Now it's 5 of 7, like Matt was talking about. And he said after the Portland loss, where you guys lost by 31, you guys had a conversation, and it's just one of those moments that can bring a team together, can galvanize a team, and you guys have responded in the right way. But it happens, I think, in different stages for every team along the way. But maybe we'll look back on that loss in Portland on that Friday night and realize maybe that was a turning point for your team.
Yeah, it could have been that turning point. I think our guys, were frustrated, embarrassed by that loss, just how we performed, how we played, how we competed more than anything. And I think it spurred us on to that sack game, in sack. Even though we didn't win the game, we played much better. I think that's when our defensive tenacity and fire turned at that point, and then we carried that into San Antonio, big win there. And I think that combination of those 2-3 games right there has put us back on the right path. Now the challenge is, can we stay here? We're going on the road against a very good team tomorrow, but we're doing some good things, and I think we're getting better. There's still a lot of season here, and there's still a lot of room for growth. So I want to see us continue to get better. We have to get better on both ends of the floor.
Well, Chris mentioned Nick. Nick is a guy who can affect the game in so many different ways. It's not just a matter of scoring, but he's been effective over the course of the last, maybe since that Portland game. He's been playing some of his best basketball. What have you seen from Nick?
Well, I've seen two things. Just the confidence. I think, you know, shooting the ball, he looks very confident to me right now. And we wanted him to be confident. He's shooting 40+% from three right now. So I think catch and shooting, he feels great there in that area. And then just aggressiveness to the rim. You know, when he sees attacks, he's trying to get downhill, get to the rim. He's become that second playmaker with that first unit. Clearly, you know, Lamb is still scoring for us. Kemba has the ball a tremendous amount, but really that secondary playmaker for us has been Nick over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's an area he's comfortable in. We've tried to manufacture some more plays for him, some more attacks to the rim, and he's done that. I think the best thing he's really done is his transition game, though. When we do get stops and we get out and run, I almost like the ball in his hands as much as anybody. You know, let Kemba run the floor, let Kemba be a screener. If teams want to stay hugged up with Kemba in transition, it just creates more opportunities for our other guys. So Nick's been very good on both ends of the floor because he's done the defense all year. He really has. You know, whether he gets credit for it or not, I know what he's brought to the table for us defensively.
And I think that's probably the adjustment period, right? Is now he's playing that small forward position. He's guarding some of the best wings and guards in the NBA night in and night out. That's taxing on the defensive end and then picking your spots on the offensive end. And the ball's been in his hand slightly less this year just because it's not sticking in any one spot, right? So I think finding your rhythm and the flow of the offense, it's a learning period. It just takes some guys maybe a different time to figure that out.
Yeah, it takes time. It does. And we've only been in, you know, at this thing a couple months together. You know, this is all new for us, this system, the style. But I think Nick's in a much more comfortable place now. I think our guys in general are understanding what we're trying to do, drive and kick and move it and space the floor. And when I can manufacture those opportunities for Nick in the half court, I'll do that. And I'm trying to find those areas for him. We've seen that the last, you know, couple weeks with the ball in his hands in the half court, but especially in transition and flow, that's his time to attack, and I think he's taking advantage of it.
The thing I've really liked to see is how much the light seems to have gone on for some of these young guys defensively. For Miles, for Malik, they're all playing better defense as you've made the commitment to wanting this team to play better defensively. Can you just talk about how those guys have really kind of embraced that and really started to play better defense for young players?
Well, I think, you know, you come into the league and you're not sure how to make your mark. I think everybody comes and says, I'm going to make my mark offensively. I'm going to put points up. You know, I'm going to get rebounds. I'm going to hit the threes. And I think there's a part of that. I think that's fair for young guys. But, you know, for us, what we need on a consistent basis is the defensive end. And that's not easy to sell to a young player as they come into the league. You know, they want their name gets shown on the highlights, or their name is up on the, you know, the ticker based on what they score and produce numbers-wise. It's not about what defense they're doing, you know, what they're producing on the defensive end for us. So I get that that's tough for a young kid to embrace. We've tried as a team, though, as a unit, as a staff, to preach this, and I think our guys are starting to buy into it, that the defensive end is where we make our money. You know, that's where we make our money every single night, and these guys have to buy into it, and I think they're starting to. The game is slowing down for them on that end of the floor. They're understanding their personnel better, who they're guarding. They're understanding our schemes more. They're playing with more effort and resiliency on the defensive end. And I think overall, in general, we've held them accountable this season. You know, guys aren't going to play defense, they're not going to play. And I think we've sat, you know, Malik at times, we've sat Bridges at times. You know, and our young guys, Billy's been the same way. You know, Billy put him in that young group as well. When he's not defending, he's not going to be on the court. So Billy, Monk, Miles, I expect them to guard every single night. And I think now we have a base of accountability for our guys. They understand that. And all of us, you know, are buying into that end of the floor.
And with Malik specifically, I think you could probably showcase the first half of the game against New York and the second half, especially the fourth quarter, and say, all right, this is what happens when the game comes to you, right? And you're not forcing everything. And that's the other growth part of a young player's career. But in that fourth quarter, all of his threes, 4 of them, I believe all of them were on catch and shoots. There's a rhythm to his shot. He's electric, obviously, as we all know when he does that. But even the playmaking ability started to come to him in the fourth. But you could see the light bulb go off for him in the fourth, where the game just came to him and he started to dominate and really lifted you guys to a win.
Yeah, he did, you know, and like you said, they were catch and shoot, you know, so Kemba was creating for him, the ball was moving, it wasn't sticking and creating one-on-one. I like his one-on-one game, and that has to get better for us, but, you know, right now, if he can catch and shoot with that ball movement and knock down the threes, that adds a different dimension to our offense. He's a confident shooter. He's putting a lot of time in on his shot right now. You know, I think he can trend closer to a 40% three-point shooter. That's where I think think his target is right now. So the game is slowed down on that end. He's making the right play, and he's trying to make the right play. He's not going to be 100% every single time. I don't expect him to. But I think he's very aware of his teammates right now. And he made a huge play. I think he kicked it to Marv underneath the rim last night. He attacked. He could have shot it, but he found Marvin right there. And that's just growth, you know. And I think he had already hit a couple threes at that point, so he could have easily taken that one. But he trusted his teammate, looked for the right guy. He's making the right play more than he's not.
You mentioned Kemba. You had 3 assists on 4 of those threes that Monk had in the fourth quarter. So obviously Kemba continues to have more confidence in his teammates as well as giving up the ball there. But let's just talk about Kemba for a second. Starter in the All-Star game. For you, is that vindication as a coach to see what he's been able to do, obviously, in fitting into your system?
Well, he's had a tremendous year. You know, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit. The work he's put in, the sacrifice he's put in on a nightly basis. I mean, this is, you know, he got off to such a hot start, you know, early on. Teams, you know, every game plan is geared towards Kemba Walker. You know, they put the best defender. Their scheme is built to try to stop Kemba, and yet he continues to produce for this team. So I'm just proud of him, just how he's handled this entire season. New staff coming in, new personnel, adding Tony Parker, adding young guys to the mix. He's just handled himself with great poise, humility, and maturity. I mean, he's just a mature young individual that's only getting better as well. So proud of him, happy for him and his family. A tremendous honor just to be named a starter in the NBA. I mean, who would ever thought that, you know, when he was drafted, that Kemba Walker would one day be a starter in an NBA All-Star game. Just a great story. It speaks to his work ethic, his spirit, his competitiveness. So thrilled for him, thrilled for the city, the organization, for everybody that's touched his journey along the way. So I think this is going to just be a special weekend for all of us to enjoy, but mostly for Kemba.
Coach, how pivotal is this next few weeks where you've got this 3-game homestand? We'll go to Boston to take on the Celtics Wednesday, but then you come back for 3, then have 4 games. So we split up a little bit in terms of how they're spread out on the road. Then we'll get the All-Star break. But this stretch where you're starting to play better basketball, you're in this playoff push, but guys naturally want to get to that All-Star break too. So how pivotal is this next 2 weeks?
This is a huge stretch right here for us, huge stretch. I think a lot of teams, a lot of players they can't wait for that break. You know, they just got their eye on whatever beach they're going to or whatever city they're going to, and this is our time to make up ground right now. You can't relax, we can't relax. We want to play our best basketball this season right now. So every game's important, every possession is valued. We'll have plenty of time to relax during the All-Star break. And it's not a long break, but at least we'll get a few days to just relax and enjoy our families. But you know, hopefully, you know, the teams around us relax and they're thinking about the break. This is our time to put the pedal down and go for this thing.
5-7 in their last 5 wins out of their last 7 games. Need to finish strong. Hornets getting ready for the All-Star break. Coach, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always every week.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll be right back on the Hornets.com Coaches Show.
Either we win it or there's overtime. Lamb's going to have to fire. Got it! Kemba bounces into a 3. Enough legs to get it through. Buzz City. It started 30 years ago. You're the best fans then, the best fans now. Let's have a great year.
Welcome back to the Hornets.com Coaches Show. We just heard from Coach James Borrego. Great always to hear from Coach. He's always got great insight for us.
Yeah, and he's just got this positive attitude. You know, it's funny being around him. You better have that attitude, okay? You don't need any negativity around you. You got to be positive. He's got a way with the players that I think they love. And you know, you're around at practices and shoot-arounds, and this coaching staff, they bring the energy, they bring the juice, and they want the players to bring that. Because through 82 games in the NBA schedule, you're going to have ebbs and flows. There are going to be days where you just don't feel it, but that coaching staff makes sure everybody feels it every single night. So he's got a real positivity about it.
Honestly, when I first started hearing how loud practices could be, how loud shoot-arounds can be, I thought this is going to trail off after a couple weeks. This is probably not going to last. It's still lasting. I feel like it's getting louder sometimes. I'll
tell you this too, Coach. Normally we'll play some music sometimes at practice and at shoot-arounds when guys are getting shots up and warming up and cooling down. And normally, one of the video coordinators will handle the music responsibility. Occasionally, you'll see Ron Norred will come over and he'll grab the aux cord, so to speak. But JB's been getting in the mix recently, so JB's starting to feel more comfortable, and he's going, I think, deep in the catalog. I don't know if some of these young guys know some of the music he's playing at practice.
I was going to say, maybe next Coach's Show, we're going to have to get his playlist from him. See who does he like to run out there on the court?
A lot of Prince, Michael Jackson. I heard some Bruce Springsteen the other day, and I'm like, how many guys know that this is the boss? Do they even know that Bruce Springsteen is known as the boss? Probably very little.
Well, mad respect for Coach. He's going into some of the classics, so there's nothing wrong with that. Got to have a positive attitude. Obviously, coming off the win, heading to Boston tomorrow, taking on the Celtics. What is it going to take?
Well, I think the Hornets got to bring an intensity about them. I think that's the one thing they lacked in that first meeting in Boston. Right before Christmas, where the Hornets went there, and they handled themselves well. But you've got to bring an energy and an intensity level to win in that building that is just at 100% nearly for 4 quarters. We saw, if you watch the Warriors and Celtics game on Saturday night, that was a heavyweight fight, and both teams took their chances and came back and dealt blows to one another. Hornets got to bring that mentality, and they did it in this building, and that's why they beat Boston in the first matchup. It's a 1-1 series right now. Hornets got to try to break that rubber match with that energy, and I think if they defend, that game's right there for the taking. You look at Boston right now, for all the talent they have, Al Horford's still playing at a really high level, maybe not the same level he was a year ago. He had a phenomenal year. Kyrie's been incredible, but they have nights where maybe the sum of their parts doesn't quite fit together yet. So if you're the Hornets, you got to try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and you talk about Coach. We just talked to him, and he was telling us how big this stretch is, starting with this Boston game. Then you come home for 3 games here, Memphis, Chicago on Friday, Saturday, the Clippers on Tuesday. How important is that homestand?
Big stretch. I think for the Hornets, as with every team in the NBA, this is probably, to a man, the toughest week or 2 in the NBA, regardless of who you're playing, because you get to look ahead. You're looking ahead to the All-Star break, especially here in Charlotte. For some players, maybe you're going out of town. Maybe some players are going to be here. We know Kemba will be here. So you're thinking probably plans, All-Star break, all those things, but you got to be locked in to what's going on day to day, game by game. And so if the Hornets can just keep themselves in playoff positioning, maybe even gain a little ground going to the All-Star break, it's a pivotal stretch. And then, as you said, 3-game homestand. There's 4 games on the road heading into the break, but it's broken up a little bit. So the Hornets will go to Dallas to close out a back-to-back on a Monday, Tuesday, and then come right back here for a few days. Practice, then it's going to continue the rest of the road trip. So I think the Hornets just got to mentally be locked in. I think this is more of a mental stretch than a physical stretch for the Hornets.
Yeah, and this team mentally has been playing so well here at home. They love taking the court at Spectrum Center. We've come out with the new season tickets that are now available on Hornets.com. Make sure you stop by or call 704-HORNETS. Get those tickets. But the Hive is alive is the catchphrase heading into this.
That brings me back to childhood.
So the Hive is alive. Again, are you noticing that the Hive is alive, especially these home games, the fans are bringing it as well?
Yeah, and I think why not, right? When you get Malik out there scoring 12 points in the fourth quarter, 12 of his 14, he had 4 threes in the fourth, that kind of electric shooting and scoring capability where it just comes in an instant, so much fun to watch. Miles, you better keep your head on a swivel if you're sitting in the stands. You go to the concession lines at the wrong time, you're missing a highlight reel dunk from Miles Bridges at any given moment. So the Hornets are playing a fun style. Obviously, Kemba, now he's a starter in the All-Star game, a 3-time All-Star in his own right. Jeremy Lamb is one of the most fun players, in my opinion, to watch at his position in the NBA because he's so smooth, the way he runs the floor, the difficulty of shots he takes. So the future is really bright, but it's also really bright right now. The Hornets, as is, are a really good team, and you think about where they can go, and it's pretty exciting.
You mentioned really good team, and you've said his name a couple times so far, Kemba Walker, all-star starter. year. Just what does that mean for him and this organization?
Well, you know, Matt, let's put this in context a little bit. The fan voting changed a little bit for the All-Star game, where in years past, 100% of the vote is what names starters for the All-Star game. It was always thought to be maybe more of a popularity contest. More often than not, it aligned with maybe who was worthy of it. But last year, for example, under the old format, Kemba got a couple 100,000 votes, which is a lot, by the way. It's a lot of votes. This year, almost 1 million more votes in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I think it speaks to a lot of things. I think it speaks to our fan base. I think it now speaks to maybe the national and international appeal and acclaim for Kemba, and that's all due to him. He came right out of the chute this year, just putting on a show. You think back to those 2 games against Philly and Boston where he had 103 points combined. And until James Harden came around in the last month, that was the highest point total in consecutive games in the NBA all year, and he's doing it at a listed 6'1". And Kenny the Jet, I thought was so funny on Thursday, right? He said he's listed at 6'1". He said, I know Kemba, he's maybe more 5'10". And so that's what's incredible. He's doing James Harden-esque things where he's scoring at a high clip, difficulty levels through the roof. He's really shouldering a heavy load, and he's doing it at a size that quite literally we've never seen before. Kemba, if the season ended today, would be the first player listed at 6'1" or shorter to average as many points, rebounds, assists, and steals per game as he's putting up right now.
So on the court, we know he's an absolute, he can dominate.
Yeah.
Off the court, this couldn't happen to a better guy because he represents this city better than anybody we could choose to represent them.
And how about our video that I think went over 1 million views all over the internet, where Kemba was watching himself be named on TV as he was getting ready to be interviewed on Thursday night with the All-Star starters, and he just gave out a little chuckle and a shrug, because that's Kemba. Through and through, that's Kemba. And we all congratulated him, his teammates congratulate him, and then you move on. He's just on to the next thing, and I think he should be in awe. I know he is in awe, but he's just so matter of fact and so just even keeled about the way he goes about things. So it's definitely deserving.
Overall, great things happening in here in Charlotte. Obviously, we've got the All-Star game coming up. We've got a great string of games coming up down the line before the All-Star game. We want you fans to get out there. Let's make this hive alive as we continue to make this playoff push as we head into the break. For Chris Kroger, for head coach James Borrego, I'm Matt Rochinski with Hornets.com.